Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. In this video, we're going to react to how the CIA found Osama bin Laden. You know, Osama, he was a man who I think was worth billions of dollars. He was a very, very wealthy man. So the connections, the access to places, people that buys, is vast. So finding him, especially after the events, that took down the Twin Towers, must have been really, really hard. Because he obviously had his supporters, people that, hid him and would rather die before they, betrayed him. So it must have been quite a challenge. There must have been quite a difficult route to take in order to, actually find and locate him. I think he was hiding in a cave or something in the mountains. I'm like the movie Zero Dark 30, it was difficult to find him.
For the 2004 US presidential election, a newly published tape appears on the news. The election between George Bush and John Kerry was dominated by foreign policy decisions in the wake of the September 11 attacks.
Al-Qaeda's key members and associates have been brought
to destroy, capture, kill Osama bin Laden and all of the terrorists.
This tape, published by Al Jazeera, now shows a recovered Osama bin Laden, claiming responsibility for the attacks much more directly than before. The staging of this recording, in which bin Laden tries to appear as some legitimate figure, directly addressing the nation that he attacked, is a painful reminder that the most wanted man on the planet must be feeling somewhat safe wherever he may be.
Due to his, connections and stuff, right?
At the very same time, at the CIA headquarters in Virginia, where a special unit was tasked with finding bin Laden, pretty much every lead had gone cold at this point. A situation that was even more frustrating considering that almost 3 years ago, they believed they were close to catching him.
Really?
By the end of the 2001 US invasion of Afghanistan, Al-Qaeda fighters had been pushed into the eastern part of the country. Here, they barricaded themselves in the caves of Tora Bora, and American intelligence agencies suspected bin Laden to be amongst them. Supported by the Americans, local Afghan tribes fought through the terrain, and heavy airstrikes were carried out. But by the time the battle was won, bin Laden had already fled. After the fighting...
This is the thing, I'm sure he probably kept moving. He probably wasn't in any location for much longer than a week or so, maybe every few days.
Ended, only about 20 people were arrested and the CIA was left empty-handed, having missed what may have been a unique opportunity to capture Al-Qaeda's leader. But at least one of the people arrested here would eventually open a lead for investigators to follow. Prior to his capture, Mohammed al-Qahtani was unknown to the investigators. He himself denied any connection to Al-Qaeda and said that he was in Afghanistan to pursue his interest in falconry.
I mean, that's what he would say, You know what the alternative is going to get you. You're going to get shipped to Guantanamo.
But when investigators took his fingerprints, they found a match in their system. They found out that just a few weeks before the September 11 attacks, he had tried to enter the United States. Carrying $2,800 in cash with him and traveling on a one-way ticket, the customs agent became suspicious of Qahtani and denied him entry to the country, fearing he might be trying to illegally immigrate. The investigators also knew that on the very same day, a call was placed from Orlando Airport to an Al-Qaeda telephone number in the United Arab Emirates. This number had been monitored, and the fact that Qahtani was at the airport at the same time made investigators scramble to establish some sort of connection between these events. FBI agents worked their way through piles of airport surveillance footage looking for more leads, and eventually they were successful. they were able to identify a car that was at the time rented by Mohammed Atta. Atta was the ringleader of the September 11 attacks and piloted American Airlines Flight 11 that struck the North Tower of the World Trade Center. It was concluded that Atta was waiting at the airport to pick up Khatani. It is widely believed that Khatani was intended as one of the hijackers of United Airlines Flight 93, which is the flight that failed to reach the attacker's intended destination because it crashed in Pennsylvania while the passengers were attempting to regain control. With that knowledge, Khatani was interrogated, and he was one of several Al-Qaeda captives that in the coming months and years made it possible for investigators to get a better picture of the group's inner workings. Abu Zubaydah, a logistician for the group, was arrested in March 2002 and offered the CIA.
Man, the eye patch, just quite sinister, isn't it? Goes with the whole theme of the video.
Information that Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, who was Al-Qaeda's operational commander, had planned the attacks on America. 1 year later, he also was arrested. And Khatani revealed that in July 2001, in preparation for the attacks, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed introduced him to a person previously unknown to the CIA, Abu Ahmed al-Kuwaiti, who trained Khatani in operational security. All this helped investigators to understand Al-Qaeda's structure better, with less trained operatives, a command and planning layer, and bin Laden as the leader. But they were still clueless as to bin Laden's whereabouts. The CIA was mapping relationships to understand who was in close contact with him and how he communicated from his hiding place. The private network of bin Laden, his family members, were also looked at. However, there was no contact between bin Laden and those family members of him that...
Such a complex web, you know, like all the people involved. It's just like, it must take so long to piece all of this together, because you then have to verify it. Is this person actually who we think he is? Did he do what we think he did?
Could be located. What the CIA knew was that bin Laden continued to send messages though. In the following years, new audio tapes appeared, and it was known that he was communicating with members of leadership within Al-Qaeda.
How?
The strategy of the CIA, therefore, was to look for the courier network, people that transport information.
Big and tasty. War with Iran.
I'm running for governor.
Explode in the sky.
Different
Our
time.
congratulations on
An historic victory.
In mid-January
Man, blast from the past, eh?
2004, Kurdish security forces arrested a man named Hassan Gul. He was carrying a letter that was addressed to bin Laden. Gul was handed over to the Americans, who interrogated him and received crucial information indicating that a key person to finding bin Laden had already been on the agency's radar. Hassan Gul claimed that it is Abu Ahmed al-Kuwaiti who operates as bin Laden's personal courier. As the focus of the investigation shifts to Kuwaiti, investigators receive conflicting information about his role within Al-Qaeda. While Hassan Gul describes a larger role and that Kuwaiti was familiar with both Khalid Sheikh Mohammed and with his successor Abu Faraj al-Libi, Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, on the other hand, denies a major role of Kuwaiti and claims that this person has long since retired and is inactive.
The thing is, like, I'm sure a lot of these people, this information was given under, we'll call it duress, okay? How do you know that this information is reliable? Because if you're extracting information from someone that you've placed under duress, you know, they're gonna tell you anything to stop what you're doing, aren't they? So, you know, how do you know? How do you separate the truth from them just trying to get you to leave them alone, you know?
In May 2005, Abu Faraj al-Libi himself was also arrested in Pakistan, and he too vehemently denied a larger role of Kuwaiti. Investigators were also questioning a guy that goes by the name of Hambali, the former leader of Al-Qaeda's Southeast Asian affiliate group. He claimed that Kuwaiti did play a role, as he was the one managing a safe house in Karachi around the time the Taliban fled from Afghanistan. If anything, the many contradicting statements about the role of Kuwaiti made him all the more interesting. The problem was that other than his name, not much was known about him. And even the name itself is not uniquely identifiable, as
it's quite
it
generic,
is not
right?
his real name, but an alias that translates as the father of Ahmed from Kuwait. While some important information was obtained through the interrogation of prisoners, the techniques used were highly controversial. Many of the prisoners were subjected to so-called enhanced interrogation techniques. That means abusive treatment including torture, such as in the form of waterboarding. A 2014 Senate Intelligence Committee report examining the individual interrogations concluded that these techniques were ineffective and did not help to obtain information about bin Laden. Apart from that, there is the question of whether the display of the CIA's actions, seemingly freed from the rule of law, doesn't itself damage the national security of the country. It is
Exactly. It basically just confirms what we just said, you know, about how if you're just pressurizing someone to get an answer out of them, they're going to tell you anything you want, you know, just to get you to leave them alone.
a discourse that's bigger than the scope of this video. But with investigators stuck yet again, the next pieces of information will not come from their own work.
Another side's it.
Peace and stability.
Blockbuster Total Access, Netflix. Essentially, they work the same way.
The latest
Early
cyber drug of
Netflix.
choice is called Twitter.
For a war that should have never been waged.
Calling it iPhone.
In 2007, the CIA received the information they're looking for, the true identity of the Kuwaiti. It does not come from their own research, but from a foreign intelligence service, which is not known. The information reveals the true name of the Kuwaiti to be Ibrahim Saeed Ahmed, a Pakistani whose family had only moved to Kuwait. But while they have waited 2 years to get the name, it will take further years until they are able to locate him.
Man, how do they even find that information?
Your victory.
For bankruptcy.
I'm gonna let you finish.
Michael Jackson has died.
The rescue effort begins.
This guy is great, as good as we've seen.
In June 2010, the Kuwaiti and his brother changed the way to communicate with their cell phones, a fact that made it possible to determine the geolocation of the calls placed. The NSA had received telephone numbers suspected of being connected to Kuwaiti from a third country, which were now intercepted. Amidst the countless conversations monitored, one man stood out because he fit the profile of Kuwaiti. He spoke a mix of Arabic and Pashto, the language spoken in northwestern Pakistan. And in a conversation with a friend in the Persian Gulf, the man dodged the question of his whereabouts, cryptically replying that he is with the people he was with before. In addition, the investigators recognized that this individual goes to great lengths to prevent being tracked.
Yeah, I mean, that's immediately suspicious, isn't it? You know, why are you hiding? Why are you saying such, you know, cryptic things? Obviously, he has something to hide.
His cell phone was switched off for most of the time, and it seems that he only put the battery in it when he was in the area around the city of Peshawar. As it became increasingly certain that this is Kuwaiti, efforts began to follow him on the ground. In August 2010, a Pakistani CIA agent managed to identify him in his car in Peshawar. From there, he was secretly followed on his way home.
Just closing in, closing in.
The large house surprised investigators. The agents had assumed that now that Kuwaiti had been identified, they would be monitoring him until he approached bin Laden's hideout. But when you look at the massive compound in which Kuwaiti lives, investigators thought that they might already be there, that Kuwaiti may be living under the same roof as bin Laden.
It's interesting that he was living in such a large house. You know, for someone who was making such an effort to hide who he was over the phone, you'd think he'd be living somewhere nondescript, you know, somewhere that you would walk past without even noticing it.
Even though Washington wasn't entirely sure about it at the time, bin Laden was located, and a manhunt that has had top priority since the September 11 attacks comes to its final stage. The task now was no longer with the intelligence agents, but with a team of special units who knew very little about what to expect when raiding this compound. On May 1st, 2011, at 11 p.m. local time, 2 Black Hawk helicopters, equipped with secret stealth technology, take off from Jalalabad airfield and head towards bin Laden's compound. The mission is complicated by the fact that the United States government had decided not to inform Pakistan of the operation, which means the Navy SEALs had to avoid getting noticed, which seems especially challenging considering that bin Laden's complex is located right next to a Pakistani military academy.
I'm guessing the US decided to do that because they thought potentially there were leaks in the Pakistani military. I can see, you know, it's quite a... You can understand the decision making there.
The story of how this raid unfolded is truly fascinating, which is why I have produced another full-length video about this operation, creating detailed models of the mission's plan and mapping out how it played out during that night. But unfortunately, due to the violent nature of this topic, if I uploaded this video to YouTube, it would certainly get demonetized and age-restricted. Luckily though, I was still able to make the video, thanks to the power of Nebula, where you can watch it right now. With the mission not going...
That was an amazing video. Like, the editor did a fantastic job, the narrator also. When I watch things like that, it just... There's 2 things that that immediately come to mind. So, the first one on the topic of the video is just how many people were involved in finding him. You know, you had the CIA, you had the NSA, you know, you had the US military, the Navy SEALs. We're talking probably thousands and thousands of people, you know, tens of thousands of hours combing through phone records, trying to find the cell phone towers that, you know, the text messages were pinged off. The amount of work involved was immense, spanned years. It was an incredible effort. And the second thing which comes to mind, which isn't really related to the video per se, is, you know, like when you've got videos like this on YouTube, no wonder people are watching less and less TV, you know, like when you can get great content like this. But, you know, back to the topic, it was just an amazing job done by, you know, the departments involved. Probably cost billions of dollars, but totally worth it to catch the person responsible for such a tragic event, you know, such a horrific event. And even though, you know, it doesn't bring back the people that were lost, the innocent people that were lost, at least, you know, the family, you know, and the close ones of those people, I guess, you know, that the person who orchestrated it, you know, got his due. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next one.